When I first started having the health issues, I thought somebody's got to help me. I mean, this is not normal for a healthy teenager to be coughing up blood. And I remember one example of going to the hospital and having a doctor come in and tell me, we've done chest x-rays, CT scans, lots of blood work, and everything is coming back normal. So for right now, I don't know what to tell you. And to me, I would, just think you can't just send me home coughing up blood. And I remember the doctor told me, Sidney, you do have to realize that you have 3 strikes against you. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, for starters, you're a teenager, you're also female, and you have bipolar disorder, and no one's gonna take you serious. And it was then that I felt so alone, and how could somebody tell me this? And I had so many other times where doctors just didn't believe that I was having the coughing up blood, because the coughing up blood would happen so fast, and then it's done, it's gone. And it wouldn't happen again.
The fact that Sidney looks healthy, we have had doctors, and I'm not going to get on that bandwagon, but you're too pretty to be sick. She is a beautiful young lady, but do you know how many times she's been told by doctors, you're too pretty to be sick? Doctors have laughed in their face. There's nothing wrong with this child.
A nurse here had witnessed Sidney projectile coughing blood all over emergency room, and he had to literally take a mop and mop the walls to get the blood off. I had a doctor here ask me, do you think she may be anorexic or bulimic? I mean, that's what he says to me. This is 3.5 years into being ill.
The time that I went into the hospital of January 2016, they decided to bronch me because I had a chest x-ray and I had a CT scan, and they both came back normal, but I was coughing up an abnormal amount of blood. And so they decided that they wanted to admit me to the hospital, and that the next day that they would bronch me.
Now Sidney called me downstairs, and she said, should I even let them do the bronch, because they've never found anything. And they'd done bronch after bronch after bronch at that time. And so they did do the bronch. So I'm sitting in the waiting area by myself, and there's just strangers around me. And a doctor that I don't even know comes to me. He says, Miss Irby, I just want you to know that, we finally have it. We have a picture of it showing Sidney's, where the blood's oozing out of her lungs, coming up everywhere. Well, I thought at that point, oh, well, they're going to cure Sidney now. So I just started crying.
I thought at first there was horrible news. Something horrible's happened. And my mom came in the room and she was crying, and she showed me pictures. And I remember I started crying because I saw pockets of blood in my lungs, and she was telling me, Sidney, they found blood. They see blood all over both of your lungs. It was in April that I was tested for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and came back positive for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
So Sidney came to me with this paper from a hematologist here in West Virginia. He didn't call for a follow-up. He didn't call to discuss the results, but he sent this paper in the mail that his impression was Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Well, I'd never heard of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And so I called her pulmonologist. He said, let me see if I have those results. Well, he had the results sent to him as well. So he takes out those results, and they had just been sent to him, and he says, it's Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I said, well, Scott, could that be why she's coughing up blood? He said, well, Tony, it could be. I said, well, what do we do? This could be a cure. What do we do? What's the cure? When I first had a doctor tell me that they could see blood coming up, especially out of her right lower lobe, just pumping up, and I saw the images, I had a lot of hope. When I saw the impression of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I had a lot of hope. But as soon as I talked to Scott on the phone, I knew that we were not in a good place.
Telling us she had EDS was almost like a life sentence. There is no cure for it. And it would have been nice if they could have said, well, the bleeding's coming from this, we'll fix that. But they can't fix it. And it gives you a helpless feeling.
Sidney's head to her toes, she's had symptoms of her head hurting horribly, her ears ringing,
gastroparesis and stomach pain, and feeling like my intestines are being burned with a lighter or cigarettes. I've had a period now for 11 months that won't stop, that I'm getting ready to have to schedule a hysterectomy because we've tried every other option to stopping the bleeding. I have muscle pain, I have migraines very bad, I have pseudo-seizures.
Convulsions. Early on, Sidney would come to me at night, and her whole body would just sort of be convulsing, like contracting into a ball and then releasing.
I have coughing up blood, I have chest pain, shortness of breath, I have POTS syndrome, so my blood pressure will drop very low and my heart rate will go very high and I will pass out.
Now some days, she does nothing but lays in bed. But I always have it in my mind, it must be, the way she's feeling right now must be really, really horrible for her not to want to get up and do something. Do just something.
I was feeling like I was having a good day. I decided that I was gonna go ride my horses. So I was heading down to my grandmother's house. I noticed that my car was starting to slow down. And so there I am trying to press on the gas pedal and the car's still slowing down. And so I was veering off the side of the road and I'm looking down to, try to press on the brakes. And then I noticed that I'm not pushing on the brakes at all. I'm not pushing on the gas at all. It's my legs. I had no feeling below my waist at all. I could not move my legs.
She called me, she said, Mama, I pulled off the road and I can't feel my feet. I told Sidney, I said, just sit there. And I said, we will send an ambulance.
The episode that I was involved in with the Sidney, and subsequently had a chance to know the Sidney very well, was that Sidney developed acute weakness in both legs, and that was because of the severe stress she was going through. Around the same time she has all these things going on, she was going through a lot of rough times. She was dealing with significant stomach issues, bladder issues, she was planned for some surgeries. And because of this stress, the stress manifested as a weakness without having any actually structural problem. I think the Sidney is a very strong-willed person. Typically when we tell the people that you have a functional deficit, they look at you, they try to fight at you. They would say, oh, I'm not crazy, I'm not depressed, I'm not anxious, it's all in your mind. But actually, in Sidney's case, she did understood because she was going through these non-epileptic events. And that's the biggest step, to ask for the help. That is half the battle.
So one night I was laying in bed. This was when Sidney was sick, and I had been praying, and I had this really, really comforting feeling just come right over me. This comforting feeling that God was going to give me comfort. And I remember thinking, at that point, oh, this is wonderful. Now, this was about 3 years ago. But then I sort of started realizing He was going to give me comfort. But I don't think it was going to be in the way that I had originally thought. That I was going to be comforted, but Sidney was not going to live. He just wasn't going to have her suffer as much as she could. And I've given up on quantity of life, but I'm focused on quality.